Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. Parliament resumed today for an emergency sitting to pass legislation allowing the government to spend billions to aid Canadians, including the $305 million Indigenous Community Support Fund. But some opposition members accuse the government of trying to get sweeping powers to borrow and tax. APTN's Todd Lamrand begins, however, with the race to speed up testing for the virus.
During his daily media briefing, Prime Minister Trudeau was asked about a backlog of test results.
We are moving to accelerate the processes because testing is not just about giving people peace of mind. It's an essential element for the public health response that will keep us all safe.
At her briefing, Dr. Theresa Tam acknowledged speedier testing is needed, especially for remote communities and in the territories. She addressed reports that newer tests get results in hours rather than days.
And our National Microbiology Lab has acquired some of these rapid test modalities right now, and they are quality assuring them to make sure that they can actually diagnose. And then that will be very soon that we will be able to, if they work, be able to then roll it out.
Meanwhile, Parliament began with the Speaker and Sergeant-at-Arms keeping their social distance as they marched in. But the House, with less than 36 MPs, was immediately suspended. The government and opposition leaders are reportedly negotiating details of the $82 billion emergency spending measure. Conservative MPs like Michelle Rempel said on social media that the Liberals added a proposal to spend, borrow and tax freely until December 2021, something Trudeau backed away from.
We have an opposition that is doing its job of making sure that we're taking the right steps the right way, and that's why we've been working on drafting the right legislation up until the last minute.
Conservative leader Andrew Scheer said he would cooperate in getting the measure passed quickly.
Any conversation about new powers should not get in the way of assistance being delivered in the hands of Canadians. So what we would like to see is the government to propose a bill that does exactly what the Prime Minister announced last week.
The new legislation is supposed to go to the Senate Wednesday and receive royal assent shortly after. Todd Lamrand, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The province of Quebec now leads Canada with the most diagnosed cases of COVID-19, with 400 more people testing positive overnight. 2 of them are on Mohawk territory just south of Montreal, where residents have been locking down since last week. Lindsay Richardson has more.
With new restrictions in place, those in Ganawage have fewer places to go. But news from their COVID-19 task force keeps coming.
Not to be an alarmist, but the overall situation in our area has gotten worse. Despite measures that have been taken, the virus continues to move.
2 more confirmed cases in Ganawage, both patients at the Cattery Memorial Hospital Centre. This despite reassurances that a working doctor self-isolated before infecting others. But officials aren't surprised.
We could say with 100% certainty that we are going to see many more positive cases in the Ganawage community very shortly.
Following that news, the community fortified its lockdown. All non-essential businesses closed. But for emergency services, business as usual. Even though measures are still being added, the task force says it doesn't mean they're not working.
There is no playbook to what we're doing. We're in a very unique situation in terms of Ganawage versus other First Nations, as we are right in the middle of a metropolitan area.
Premier François Legault warned of a potential spike in confirmed cases as cities like Montreal ramp up their testing capacity. Quebec now leads with the most confirmed cases of COVID-19, surpassing 1,000 overnight. In response, the province will lock down at midnight, closing its non-essential businesses. Police in Montreal are now authorized to hand out fines and arrest those who aren't social distancing. While officials stave off panic in the south, no cases are reported further north. The Cree of Iuichi said in a statement their situation remains, quote, unchanged, as it does in Nunavik. Quebec Public Health is investigating the 2 new cases in Ganawage and will inform those at risk. To everyone else, the task force asks, stay connected, but stay calm.
I'm really asking you not to give up. This is not unexpected. This is expected. We don't give up. We're ready for this.
Lindsay Richardson, APTN National News, Ganawage, Mohawk Territory.
Last week, Vancouver declared a state of emergency to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. That declaration gave the city more powers to enforce any safety measures that they deem necessary. And as Tina House reports, Vancouver will now be fining people and business owners who break the emergency rules.
On Saturday, March the 21st, hundreds of people were seen gathered on Sunset Beach in Vancouver, enjoying a beautiful sunset, but certainly not adhering to the recommendation of being 6 feet apart. According to Mayor Kennedy Stewart, the city is no longer asking nicely. They have just passed a motion that can fine businesses up to $50,000 if caught hosting large gatherings. They can also fine individuals up to $1,000 if they refuse to stay 6 feet apart from others. Some residents think the fines are a bit too harsh, like Alex Miller, who lives near Kitts Beach.
People should just stand up and tell people what's right and wrong, rather than looking to the central authority to come down with rules and fines and stuff like that. That's my opinion.
This weekend, I saw reports of people hosting house parties, having group picnics on the beach, playing soccer, playing beer pong. Beer pong. Now, this isn't a game. People are dying.
And those stiffer rules include the closure of playgrounds. Parking lots to beaches and parks are now also closed to prevent the spread of the disease. Parks Board officials say if the public is still not getting the message to stay home, they may consider just closing parks and beaches for everyone's safety.
The number of new cases is 48, giving us a total number of test positive cases of 472 here in British Columbia.
Health officials say over 18,000 tests have been conducted, and they are now turning their attention to healthcare workers to ensure the safety of patients in hospitals and care homes. The Lynn Valley Care Home in North Vancouver is the site of Canada's first cluster of COVID-19 cases at a health facility. 36 residents and 19 staff have all tested positive, and 9 of the 13 deaths in BC are residents who have died from the virus. However, on Vancouver's downtown east side, the message for social distancing has not gotten through to everyone, as people are still continuing to gather close together. Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
It's time for a short break, but coming up, a clause from Treaty 6 is being used to help 4 First Nations in Alberta deal with COVID-19. But first, here's a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Over on the East Coast, +3 in Charlottetown and +6 in Fredericton with sun. -4 in Coujawak with snow and 0 degrees in Cartwright. +7 in Quebec City and +6 in Val d'Or. +9 in North Bay and +9 in Toronto. +5 in Thunder Bay and 0 degrees in Trout Lake with snow. -13 in Churchill and -5 in Norway House with sun. -4 in Winnipeg and -4 in Barons River. 0 degrees in Regina and -2 in North Battleford. -4 in Stony Rapids and -2 in La Ronge with some snow.
That's it. Hello. The current COVID-19 pandemic is an immense challenge facing the entire world, and it must be treated as such by all people. The Assembly of First Nations has declared a state of emergency for all of our people and First Nations. We need to do everything possible to prevent its transmission. Look, I know how much we enjoy gathering for our round dances, our powwows, our feasts, and our ceremonies. But chiefs, councillors, young people, old people, men, women, no matter where you live, take this seriously. Everyone must stay home and self-isolate, as public health officials are telling us to do. Essential service providers are the only non-residents who should be entering our communities, as well as the remote and isolated territories. Essential service providers only. We are advocating strongly to governments to ensure that financial and human resources are in place to meet the needs of First Nations, regardless of where you live. To our young people, you have one shot at this. Do not go out. This is no joke. The coronavirus is killing people. If you go out, you could catch this virus from one of your friends, and without knowing it, you'll bring it home to your family and pass it on to your parents, your brothers, your sisters. your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, and your grandparents. Break the cycle from your friends and stay home. You can FaceTime, WhatsApp, Snapchat, or whatever on social media until this threat has passed. And as for our old people, our elders, the kindest thing you can do for them is ensure they have what they need so that they don't have to leave their homes until this threat has passed. This could take months, and we need to look out for each other through these times. Understand you are all part of a massive global effort to stop a fast-moving killer disease. We have to do this. We can't deviate. Stay home and self-isolate. We must stay united to tackle this challenge. We must help each other, be patient with each other, and care for each other. We'll get through this together. Eguse, thank you.
Welcome back. Fort William First Nation in Ontario is now setting up security checkpoints restricting access to its residential areas. After a meeting Monday night, chief and councils say it's the first of many steps to come. Businesses have been ordered to close between the hours of 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. and only residents and emergency response workers will be allowed through checkpoints. Grassroots organizations are coming up with creative ways to service the urban Indigenous population during the COVID-19 pandemic. As Brittany Hobson shows us, Winnipeg organizations are working to ensure some of the city's most vulnerable are safe.
Ganiganichik is one of a handful of organizations who works with the city's urban Indigenous population. They closed their doors March 13th due to COVID-19. They say community members need supplies.
Those are young women who don't have vehicles. They are using public transportation, and they're having to go to 47 different places to find toilet paper, and so that's putting their whole family at risk.
The new reality of social distancing means services are reduced, but many are still working to reach vulnerable groups. Mama Wichita Center started providing emergency kits on March 18th.
Our families still utilize our services. They're our most vulnerable families that we're working with, and we can't just shut them out.
The North Point Douglas Women's Center are handing out bagged lunches 3 times a week. Mama Bear Clan, which operates out of the center, is still patrolling, but with a smaller team.
We're actually finding right now that a lot of people are missing that social aspect. A lot of those that come to our center don't have smartphones or can't Skype, can't do all these things. So the center really became the hub for a lot of people to build relationships.
The Liberal government allocated a $305 million package for Indigenous communities to combat COVID-19. Indigenous Services Canada told APTN urban organizations will be eligible to access funds. Jocelyn Formsma is the executive director for the National Association of Friendship Centers. She says she's been in talks with the federal government.
What we're trying to do is just make sure that there is at least a voice for the urban community members and not at the expense of anybody else.
For right now, Winnipeg organizations are relying on donations from the public. Brittany Hobson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
The 4 First Nations that make up the Musqueam community in Alberta have declared a state of emergency. And they're using the medicine chest clause from Treaty 6 to ask for federal aid. Chris Stewart has the details.
Leaders from the 4 First Nations of Musqueam, Samson, Ermineskin, Louisbourg, and Montana want financial aid from the federal government to get testing kits, supplies, and housing assistance. They are using the Famine and Pestilence Clause from Treaty 6 signed in 1876. Marlene Poitras is the AFN Alberta Regional Chief.
Our ancestors knew that these days were coming, and they overcame many obstacles so that we could stand here today. They made sure the clause would be there in times of great need, and that time is here now. It is incumbent upon the Crown, the other partner, to act with honor and to come to the support of nations.
Poitras says the proximity of the nations to 2 international airports, Edmonton and Calgary, leaves their community at risk.
If the virus were to get into the First Nations communities, it could be devastating. We're very vulnerable. We have a lot of issues overcrowded housing, and the list goes on and on and on. And we don't have the same level of health care support services that the rest of Canada enjoys.
Former Treaty 6 Grand Chief Wilton Littlechild wants community members to follow social distancing and follow guidelines set by the bands. He warned young people to take this pandemic seriously.
This message is directly to you, the young people. You heard your leaders. Listen to their message that this is a very serious issue.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
A First Nation chief from Saskatchewan was recently featured in an article in the United States for how he handled the pandemic in his community. Priscilla Wolfe has more.
Chief Matthew Pagan recently made some headlines in the United States. In an article, Esquire wrote President Trump could learn from Chief Pagan because he started stockpiling supplies for his community weeks ago. But Chief Matthew Pagan of the Pasqua First Nation doesn't care about the media attention.
I don't really waste my time with that. This virus is not about media attention, and that's never my intent.
Chief Pagan says he's learned from previous pandemic panics to be prepared for the worst.
It's like, you remember that story, the boy who cried wolf? That's the way this virus is with the World Health Organization. In 2003, the World Health Organization turned around and told the world, SARS is coming. Be ready. It's going to be a killer. So the countries of the world got ready. And I remember Health Canada, Indian and Northern Affairs, now called Indigenous Services Canada, even got the First Nations prepared. Nothing came about. It wasn't very, very bad. Then in 2009, we got the H1N1. Again, the World Health Organization said this is a killer. So again, everyone got prepared. The world's got prepared.
As other First Nation leaders are now trying to gather supplies for their communities, especially in case of a lockdown, Chief Pagan has this advice.
All I could reiterate to the First Nations and non-First Nations is self-isolate, keep your social distancing. Anyone sick, stay away. If I was the government in charge, I would turn around and shut down bars, restaurants. I would shut those all down. I would shut down the supermarkets. I don't know. To me, it's scary, and it's even scarier because of the unknown.
Priscilla Wolfe, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The COVID-19 pandemic has delayed the All Clans meeting for Wet'suwet'en members. The proposed agreement with the hereditary chiefs, federal and provincial governments will be on hold until a way is found for members to safely meet. At the Wet'suwet'en camps, they have put in precautionary protocols for COVID-19. In Whitsett, the largest Wet'suwet'en community located half an hour from Smithers, only band members from that community are allowed in. There is no confirmed date for the vote on the proposed agreement by all members. Giddington Camp Media Coordinator Jennifer Wickham gave an update.
There was a death in the community, and then there was a restriction put on how many people can gather at once. And so we weren't able to have our final meeting to make a decision as a clan, and there hasn't been any notice yet that we're going to be planning another meeting.
A new episode of Face to Face airs tonight right after the news. Our guest this week is Adrian Sutherland, the lead singer of Midnight Shine. Sutherland recently debuted his first solo single, Politician Man. The song was written shortly after his home community of Attawapiskat declared a state of emergency over contaminated water.
And it's not just, I think, for Indigenous peoples, I think it's for everyone. I think we have this frustration where we feel like we don't have a voice, and there's never any fair hearing when it comes to certain things in our communities. And for me, it was water that kind of pushed me over the edge, not having access to clean water, and I just, I just felt really angry and upset.
It's time for another quick break, but still ahead, a young toilet paper collector is using her stash for the greater good. And here's the rest of tomorrow's weather. Over in Western Canada, -3 in Fort Chipewyan and +1 in High Level. -1 in Calgary, and +1 in Edmonton. 10 degrees in Vancouver and 11 degrees in Campbell River. +6 in Fort Nelson and +7 in Smithers. +5 in Watson Lake and +4 in Whitehorse. +2 in Fort Simpson and +4 with sun in Trout Lake. -6 in Colville Lake and -9 in Fort McPherson. -18 in Baker Lake and -19 in Repulse Bay. -26 in Arctic Bay and -21 in Clyde River. Welcome back. The 2020 Summer Olympics are the latest major event facing setbacks due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Olympic Committee organizers announced today the games set to take place in Japan will be postponed up to a year. Thomas Barrero of Akwesasne won the Canada wrestling trials in the 97-kilogram Greco-Roman wrestling division in December. That earned him the right to represent Canada at an Olympic qualifier set to take place in Bulgaria on April 30th. But that event, too, has been postponed.
Right now, there's a lot of things in flux, and there's a lot of uncontrollables. There's a lot of things that we don't have direct control over. So you're going to waste a lot of energy focusing on that and getting scared, and you know, that's all going to just overwhelm you. If I think about it too hard, it'll overwhelm me, you know? So I like to try to, if there's one takeaway, I think it's to focus on the things you can control. Focus on the actions you're doing every day. How are you making the best of your time in isolation?
We've all seen the videos of mass toilet paper hoarding of late, but a little girl from Fisher River Cree Nation, 2 hours north of Winnipeg, was amassing a collection long before the COVID-19 craze. Melissa Ridgen explains.
Shantae Green was way ahead of the toilet paper trend. The 10-year-old who has autism has been buying it for years.
How long have you liked toilet paper? A long time?
Yeah.
Why? Why do you like them?
Because this toilet paper is amazing.
Because toilet paper is amazing?
Her love of toilet paper is so heartfelt, her birthday cake is iced with a photo of her and a beloved roll of toilet paper. For Christmas, she asked Santa for some toilet paper, and he delivered. It was even the subject of her grade 3 science project. To be fair, her love affair with paper products extends beyond just toilet paper. She has a soft spot for paper towel and facial tissue, too. So what did her Fisher River Cree Nation friends and family think when the world started going bananas, emptying toilet paper shelves around the globe?
So I have a lot of friends and family who are already thinking of this, and like as soon as they thought of like, oh my God, toilet paper storage, wait, I'm okay. I got Shantae and Chantal.
The mom and daughter duo indeed have a square to spare and are sharing with others. Melissa Ridgen, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
That's your APTN National News for this Tuesday. Stay up to date with the very latest on COVID-19 by visiting our special page, aptnnews.ca/COVID-19, and by downloading the APTN News app. Stick around. Face to Face is next. I'm Daryl Stranger. Thanks for tuning in.